the instance in which finasteride can actually significantly impact your actual like permanent penis size for the rest of your life is What's up guys, Derek, moreplates.com. Today we're going to be talking about the truth behind, does finasteride make your dick smaller? So, some people, they swear by the fact that, they're completely unable to achieve an erection after using finasteride, or their dick became smaller or whatever. The reality is, I've discussed this in my post-finasteride syndrome video. At the end of the day, it all boils down to essentially androgens transcribing effects in tissues where they're supposed to, and a relative lack of sufficient stimulation if you're depriving yourself of the most androgenic hormone in your body. So if somebody is in a state of, let's just say hypothetically you have a low free DHT, or even if you have a high total but you have a low free because of SHBG or whatever the issue is, and you have a low free T as well, if you inhibit 5-alpha reductase significantly and you crush your free DHT to levels, below, physiologic healthy range, give or take. Obviously the range is very variable and doesn't necessarily guarantee optimal function if you fall in that spectrum, but just for the sake of simplicity, you're essentially putting yourself in a position whereby you now have to have not all of your testosterone, but your testosterone has to pick up a lot of the slack for DHT, and it's not nearly as androgenic. So therefore you would have to have way more test to make up for that relative lack of DHT. So let's just say if you crush your DHT to absolute zero with dutasteride, you better damn well hope that you have enough free T and total to transcribe effects around the body that need to be, fulfilled. Because otherwise, that's, at the end of the day, the androgenicity of DHT is essentially what mediates this, like vasodilation in the penis essentially is basically facilitated by DHT. So if you deprive that tissue or that organ of the DHT it needs to produce enough nitric oxide to achieve a good quality erection, you need to get those androgens from somewhere. So if you're one of the individuals who has fallen to suboptimal territory whereby you can no longer sustain a 100% erection, like some people can, the thing is a lot of people, they misinterpret erection. They think, oh, my dick's smaller now, but in reality their erection quality is just much worse than it used to be. They can still get hard, but it's not 100%, versus prior it might have been 100%, and now it's like 78 to 80, and they think, oh, the ruler says I have I'm like 3/4 of an inch smaller, and it's like, no dude, you just don't have as much blood in there as you normally would because you don't have as much DHT. So that doesn't mean that's going to happen to everyone though. There's a lot of people who have 100% quality with just relying on whatever systemic DHT is left over after inhibiting 5-AR and having a decent test level. And again, it comes down to balancing your androgens, your estrogen and whatnot. But at the end of the day, is finasteride going to make your dick smaller? No. However, there's caveats to that, which I want to get into here. So if you are in puberty and you haven't finished puberty yet, puberty is the time where your body floods itself with androgens. And these androgens are what are responsible for developing, male secondary sexual characteristics, including developing your penis. So if you deprive your body of DHT during this crucial time, then yes, you could end up making your dick not smaller than it currently is, but you're going to limit its potential severely. And this is where you get guys with, I'm sure you've probably heard of micropenis before. It's like male pseudohermaphrodites essentially, whereby they didn't have enough androgens in their youth throughout adolescence and going into puberty, and so they don't develop as much as the next guy. So, that as a consequence of 5-alpha reductase inhibition, these male pseudohermaphrodites, they often have a genetic mutation in the gene that encodes for 5-alpha reduction. So if you have an issue like a mutation in that gene and your body can't 5-alpha reduce testosterone to DHT correctly or at all, you end up in a position where you might have an elevated T, which is cool because you're going to be, muscular still, but you're going to have no stimulation to develop your penis and secondary sexual characteristics as much as somebody else who's going through puberty normally and healthy. So the instance in which finasteride can actually significantly impact your actual permanent penis size for the rest of your life is if you take it during puberty. So this is where the risk to reward on finasteride for somebody who's in their teens is a lot different than somebody who is in their early 20s or older than that. Because if you have fully developed, you're now at a point where you only need, I'm not going to say, okay, this is a very general statement and is not applicable to health optimization. You have to think here in terms of keeping your hair with pharmacology versus optimizing your health. At the end of the day, the ideal situation would be to not do anything and not take any drugs. So this is not talking about a health context, but in terms of just maintaining enough androgens to stimulate you to be able to get a high quality erection, you no longer need to support the literal growth of the entire thing. You just have to sustain it. So it's like the equivalent of, for example, a good parallel to this is talking about growth hormone. Growth hormone is what is going to regulate, along with other processes like aromatization, estrogen, and stuff like that. But growth hormone is what, makes your bones grow when you're in puberty too. There's a reason why bodybuilders who slam themselves with mega doses of growth hormone don't just grow, several feet in height or, at all, not even inches, not even 1 inch. Most bodybuilders don't even gain 1 inch from mega dosing, 10, 20 IUs of growth hormone. The reason is because they're done puberty and their growth plates have closed. The same sort of thing applies to puberty when it comes to DHT. So during that phase where you're supposed to have a flooding of those hormones, your body it's in growth mode, and that's when it actually uses them to support those, growth pathways. But once your body has, completed its puberty process, those processes now just need hormonal support to stay physiologically functioning. They don't necessarily need to be mega dosed in order to produce, maximum amounts of growth, because you're no longer in a position where you can even make use of them at those ridiculous dosages to, I'm not saying you shouldn't, I'm trying to be careful about how I word this here. I'm not trying to say you don't need DHT. This is not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say that if you're in puberty and you have a ton of growth hormone endogenously, it's going to contribute to you getting taller. If you're a full-grown adult, it's not going to do anything for you. It's going to promote, I'm not going to get into what it does, but anyway, it's not going to make you taller when you're an adult. If you're in puberty and your body's flooded with DHT and androgens, they're going to work and they're going to, stimulate penis growth as well as, all the other things they do. When you're an adult, they still, viralize and they cause that, androgenic side effects, but they're not going to do what they do in puberty. I'm trying to put it as simple as I can in terms of basically once the puberty process is complete, the cutoff window is there for that. DHT is no longer something that's going to actually impact the size plus or minus in any regard. The only way you're going to lose permanent size on your dick is if you deprived yourself of androgens for so long that you didn't achieve an erection for years on end. So a good example of that is males who transition from male to female. They don't necessarily lose any size permanently, even though they've, some of them crush their androgens into the ground, not just their DHT, but their T and their DHT and everything. Everything's in the ground. They spike their estrogen through the roof too. They maintain their size. The problem for them though is they're essentially asexual and can't get a good quality erection anymore because they have no androgens in their body and they just have no sex drive, no male driven sex drive that's the androgenic type of a sex drive that would support a ridiculously high quality, So at the end of the day, the only way you're going to permanently lose size is by depriving yourself in your youth of androgens that you would otherwise need to promote growth to achieve, your full matured state, at which point it just requires support. And this is why anyone can take finasteride or dutasteride and not, there's the majority of people won't have side effects. But if you have a kid who is deprived of 5-AR, or I should say deprived of proper functioning enzyme whereby it actually creates DHT, they're going to experience really, really fucked up puberty, whereby they are probably not going to develop facial hair as much. They're not going to have as much hair loss. If any, they're going to have a micro penis probably. They're still going to be muscular because they still have a ton of testosterone. They'll have more testosterone than the guy who 5-alpha reduces into DHT, but they're not going to have the androgenic environment needed to support that androgen dominant, flooding that's needed during the puberty process. So one thing I wanted to bring up too is a very notable rodent model, which essentially we can extrapolate to kind of elucidate the same kind of process that happens in humans when it comes to 5-alpha reductase inhibition, testosterone, and DHT. So basically, in this study, it assessed DHT is the active androgen in the maintenance of nitric oxide mediated penile erection in the rat. So basically what they did was they castrated rats and they gave them, testosterone or DHT with or without daily injections of finasteride. So after 7 days, rats were submitted to electric field stimulation and the intracavernosal pressure was recorded. So basically they castrated them and assess their erection quality essentially. So castration expectedly reduced the erection response by 50% in comparison with intact rats, and so intact being non-castrated. And testosterone restored this decrease to normal. But when finasteride was given to these testosterone treated rats, erectile response was not restored. DHT was as effective as testosterone in restoring response to EFS in castrates, and this effect was not decreased by finasteride. Nitric oxide synthase activity in the penile cytosol was measured by the arginine citrulline conversion and was found to correlate with the EFS determinations. These results show that DHT is the active androgen in the prevention of erectile failure seen in castrated rats, and suggest that this effect may be mediated at least partially by changes in nitric oxide synthase levels in the penis. So does this reinforce that testosterone is, basically it's showing that these rats that are castrated, testosterone restored all function. But if they were given 5-AR inhibitor injected at probably I actually didn't go into see what dose, but I'm assuming a dose, much higher than what people are taking. It abolished the restoration, but DHT was able to restore it still, even with the 5-AR inhibitor present. So, it's basically showing that physiologic levels of DHT are needed to support this, nitric oxide synthesis, and then, the high quality erection essentially, and testosterone isn't as good. We already know this. Testosterone is more tissue selective than DHT. It's not nearly as androgenic. DHT is several times more androgenic. It's why it causes hair loss in the first place, and is why we use it, is why we try to get rid of it in a hair loss prevention context, at least with this primitive, intervention with 5-alpha reductase inhibition. So what is this showing and how does it relate to all this? Basically, at the end of the day, the precursor and everything that you need to know about, it all stems back to androgens and androgen receptor activation and the androgenicity of whatever hormones are in your body. So for most men, testosterone is going to be sufficient to maintain function. We're not actually going to full castration here. We're going to systemic reduction of, at most, even if you use the 5 milligram Proscar dose, which is the dose for people with benign prostatic hyperplasia, that would be a 70% reduction in systemic DHT. We're not going full castration here. And even in that, you have people who the majority will maintain, good quality. I would probably assert that the majority of them probably have slightly diminished erection quality relative to intact controls other humans who haven't taken finasteride, but it could be so negligible that it's unnoticeable at the end of the day and largely goes, unnoticed for the majority of men. But for some men who do get the side effects at the end of the day, it comes down to the deprivation of DHT, and as a consequence, potentially the changes in nitric oxide synthase. So what can you do about this? Well, one thing you could do is backfill the nitric oxide synthase pathway with potent NOS precursors like L-citrulline, not citrulline malate, but pure L-citrulline is the main thing you'd be concerned with here. Nitrosamine is good, inositol, stabilized arginine silicate, agmatine sulfate potentially. These are things I've talked about in videos before. I'm not saying this is like going to fix the libido portion though, because this is still an androgen driven function. But as far as actual achieving high quality erections, if you are in a position whereby you aren't going to manipulate your hormone profile and you wanted to stay on finasteride even if it was giving you low quality erections, then perhaps this may be something you look to supplement in order to backfill that deprived pathway to achieve higher quality erections. If you're somebody who has a destructed libido though too, then in that case, that's where things get a bit more, related to other videos I've covered in the past related to post-finasteride syndrome and whatnot in the article on my site. But anyways, as far as the actual issue that stems from this deprivation of DHT, it's theorized to be the lack of nitric oxide, which you can, in theory, exogenously supplement if needed, or just, get off the 5-AR inhibitor, which then restores 5-AR activity within short order if you are on finasteride. If you're on dutasteride, it's going to take way longer, but that is what happens. And, penile penis length and girth and nothing can be permanently inhibited by finasteride. The only thing that can be inhibited is your erection quality, which at the end of the day is going to boil down to blood flow, and androgens in the body, and if there's enough of them to support the functions, because you're not going to increase your penis size. The exact same reason both ways apply. Remember what I said about the IGF-1 pathway for growing in height? If you mega dose yourself with GH in your 20s, you're not going to grow in height at all. But on the other side of the spectrum, if you deprive yourself of GH and you crush your IGF-1 into the ground, you're not going to get shorter all of a sudden. The same thing applies for DHT. If you significantly deprive yourself of DHT, your dick isn't going to permanently shrivel into nothingness and never be able to restore itself. And on this other side of the spectrum, if you wipe a bunch of DHT all over your dick, or you inject yourself with pure DHT, or you use a bunch of steroids, do bodybuilders have massive hogs? No, they don't. And they use, 2-3 grams of androgens per week, and their androgen profile is 100 times that of the normal male in terms of androgenicity levels in the body, and their dicks stay the same size. So they might have better erection quality though, because they have ridiculous amounts of androgens in the body. But again, that boils down to just, reinforces my point here, whereby at the end of the day, it comes down to AR activation, the transcription of their effects in whatever tissue they are, whatever's trying to occur via the use of them, and how androgenic the hormone is in question, and the dose or how much is being produced in the body. So there is no, increasing or decreasing of size permanently via hormone manipulation. It's simply a result of, can I still get a high quality erection or not? The only thing that's going to permanently change your size in a positive manner is actual manual manipulation, which most people don't really get into. It's PE stuff, Bathmate, Phalocin, extenders, jelqing, stretching, that kind of stuff, but it has nothing to do with hormones. If you want to look at that stuff, you could look on my site if you want, but it's ultimately irrelevant to this conversation here. At the end of the day, all you need to know is your dick's not going to get smaller from finasteride. So you just need enough androgens and enough nitric oxide to support this pathway, which would otherwise happen if you're an otherwise healthy individual with healthy endogenous androgen production, and you're not inhibiting 5-AR to a point whereby you're reliant on just a subpar T level or something like that. So anyways, take from that what you will. Bit of a long one, but hopefully it was informative. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe, check out my blog, moreplates.com. If you want to get sent my articles, which are undoubtedly better than my videos, which are broken down with table of contents, subsections, All the clinical studies I reference are hyperlinked for you to delve into further for your own personal research and whatnot. The only way you're going to get sent those articles is if you sign up to the mailing list, and then as soon as those go live, they'll get sent to you. You can delve into them further yourself, and they're a lot more organized, so they're a bit easier and more palatable, I should say. So anyways, please like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram at @moreplates_more_dates, Facebook, Snapchat, BitChute, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, wherever I am. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.